Welcome into Second Down right here on ESPN Radio. Christian Gokel alongside Cody Queen. Glad to have you alongside with us on this Tuesday afternoon. Hope you enjoyed what was a weekend full of just high-flying, awesome college hoops. A ton of upsets, 16 total upsets through the first two rounds of the NCAA tournament, and we will have continued coverage for you right here on ESPN Radio as we continue throughout the tournament. But again, glad to have you alongside. We'll catch up with Chuck Oliver, the king of college football, coming up here in about 10 minutes. Just dive into the SEC as we are in the middle now of spring practice. Also coming up a little bit later tonight, 6 o'clock, we will have the Sean Quinn Show. Them getting ready for their first home game, Cody, in over 500 days at Savannah State. So really excited to catch up with Coach Quinn on the Sean Quinn Show a little bit later. And then on 3 and Out, big show today, you catch up Buck Bellew, former Georgia quarterback, part of Buck and Hut there in 680. The Fan, going to talk some Georgia football and some Atlanta Braves baseball coming up with Buck Bellew. And then we'll also catch up with Georgia Southern head football coach Chad Lunsford coming up at 3:15 today. Georgia Southern kicking off their spring practice tomorrow. Also have their pro day coming up on the 25th, and then the spring game coming up on April 24th. So absolutely packed few hours coming up for you the next few hours here on ESPN Radio. But before we go any further, Cody, I just wanted to spend some time, give some thoughts and some prayers to the people of Boulder, Colorado. I know a city you are very familiar with, used to live near those parts of the country. If you missed the news over the weekend, we lost 10 lives in a mass shooting in Boulder, Colorado at a grocery store. 9 civilians and a police officer killed in the line of duty there. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the victims, and our thanks go out to the law enforcement that were able to eventually apprehend the suspect and take him into custody. But Cody, just a terrible weekend for a really beautiful, vibrant city of Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah, I got a bunch of family that live in Boulder, Colorado, and Castle Rock, all the way down to Colorado Springs. They're all within like a 35-minute vicinity. That's south of Denver. I don't know if you guys know, there's been a few shootings down in south of Denver. Like Aurora was the Batman shooting,
the movie theater,
and then you have Columbine that's down near there, which is down near Inglewood, south of Lakewood. If anybody is familiar with those parts over near Highlands Ranch, and so it's all crazy. This is happening. I'm flying my Colorado flag outside my house right now. It is insane that police officer that went in there and gave up his life. I was telling you last night while we are playing on our game. He's a hero, man. He's a hero. He should get full honors. They should name something after this guy. Just thinking about that. I've been in situations in my life, but man, a situation like that, an active shooter situation when you're all by yourself and this guy's got some firepower behind him, obviously, is insane. My prayers go out to them, my fellow Coloradans. Sad day, man. 10 people lost their life, and there's no excuse for it.
I was gonna say a lot of division in the country right now, a lot back and forth, differing opinions. But when you get down to the heart of it, 10 Americans lost their lives, and our thoughts and prayers are with their families. Transitioning very awkwardly away from that and into some sports again. You're going to catch up with Buck Bellew coming up in a little bit. Atlanta Braves baseball just around the corner. We will have we're your home of the Braves. So we'll have full coverage of the Atlanta Braves coming up on April 1st as they kick off their season. And I know a lot of day games coming up, Cody. So if you're at work, not able to make it home and watch the game on TV, we will be your spot, whether you're in Hilton Head, Savannah, Brunswick, St. Simons, or Waycross. ESPN Radio will have you covered down the coast for Atlanta Braves baseball. We're going to catch up with Buck Bellew and talk about that some. Really excited for Georgia Southern to get underway with their spring practice. I think a team with a lot of talent returning that's going to have a chance to make some noise in the Sun Belt this week. But I did want to dive back into the NCAA tournament, Cody. How busted is your bracket?
Not actually. It's my South and Midwest is shot, but my West and East, actually, I got Gonzaga who's still in. I still have Oregon that's still in. I have Florida State that's still in, and I have Alabama that's still in. But besides that, my South bracket, I only have Villanova. And then also, I do not have Arkansas. Do not have Oral Roberts, which I am rooting for.
You don't have a lot of things, Cody. The reason I ask you that is because currently you're in 47th place.
What about you?
In our bracket challenge. I am 13th. I am currently the highest ranked member of this station.
How is your South and Midwest doing?
I am missing 2 of my Final Four teams.
Dude.
But again, I've gotten a lot of other ones right. And if Florida State can pull it out for me and Gonzaga can pull it out for me, I'll have 2 out of 4 of my Final Four teams.
I only have one that's still in my Final Four.
It's nuts.
That's Gonzaga. Like,
It's nuts.
Oh
It
my
is-
God.
No, it's been absolutely just devastation across the board. And I think more and more pundits are starting to come out and say this thing was terribly seeded. Like there's no way in hell Loyola was an 8 seed. They're a Final Four team a couple years ago. I mean, the last tournament we had, they're a Final Four team. And now they're just doing it all over again, taking down the number 1 seed Illinois there. You mentioned it. Oral Roberts has kind of been the darling of the
They
tournament.
smoked Illinois, dude.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That was nuts. Also, was it Abilene Christian with a big upset there as well? Oregon just absolutely decimating Iowa yesterday. Iowa was a 2 seed. Oregon was a 7 seed. So some crazy upsets across. But I want to know, do you think any of these have staying power, Cody? Do you think any of these lower seeded teams can make a push to the Final Four? Because, I mean, to me, Gonzaga pretty clearly far and away the best team in the tournament. But as we've seen repeatedly the last few days, one game is all you need. You just need Gonzaga to come out and just miss a few shots and stay in it. One game is all you need. So Gonzaga clearly the best team, but are any of the lower seeded teams someone you think can make some noise?
Like Syracuse, I think Syracuse where they're like
The
11,
Boeheim boys,
dude, and they just beat West Virginia, where a lot of people thought West Virginia was going to go to the Final Four. And Syracuse is out there putting up 75 points like a game, dude. You know, they remind me a lot of this Alabama team. Me and you were just talking about Alabama last night. Alabama's shooting lights out, but Syracuse is doing the same thing. 11th seed, no way, man. I think they should have been ranked higher. I think, dude, they're like Illinois is good, which Illinois just got out. But I think they're a better team than Houston. You know, even though Houston, a game or two ago, they scored like 87 points, something like that. Houston was on fire. But I think this Houston-Syracuse game is going to be a lot better game than it's actually seeded because Houston's 11. I mean, Houston's 2 and Syracuse is 11, I think. And I think Syracuse is going to keep on going. And I think it's going to be Syracuse versus Loyola Chicago. And that's what I'm here for. 2 great shooting teams. Dude, but Syracuse is my lower seed right now that we are in the Sweet 16.
Well, yeah, if Houston loses, you would have an 8, 12, and 11 left in that region right there coming out. And theoretically, you have Syracuse against Oregon State or Loyola. Loyola is an 8 seed. Oregon State is a 12 seed. I think a few of them are going to see their runs come to an end. I think our Oral Roberts probably going to see their season come to an end when they take on Arkansas. Arkansas is a team that can pour in the buckets right there. But, I mean, you still have a 6-7 USC versus Oregon coming up. Creighton ain't beating Gonzaga. Like, Creighton, love you. Got a lot of respect for you. A couple wins there. You're not beating Gonzaga. But I think the team that's really making noise and it could be a fascinating matchup coming up in the Final Four, Alabama, Gonzaga. Like, that could be, I think, the game of the tournament, Cody. 2 teams that can pour in buckets. Alabama had 97 points in their win yesterday. I mean, 96, over Maryland. Sorry.
Did they?
Yeah, 96-77 over Maryland. And what I love about Alabama, and I know we've talked about this repeatedly on the show, is Alabama kind of plays that Golden State ball where they will give up an easy layup to kick the ball back out to take a 3 because they've got 6 or 7 dudes that are just money from the 3-point line. So I think Alabama is definitely a team. I know they're a 2 seed, but just not a traditional team you think about. I think Alabama is a team. If you're going to give someone a best chance of keeping Gonzaga out of the national championship, I think it's going to be Alabama in that Final Four run right there.
Me and you talk about the 3 points for Alabama, dude. They're shooting 48.5%.
And it's eventually it becomes like psychological, right?
Yeah.
Where they're just you're fighting for layups and they're just pouring in 3-pointer after 3-pointer and they go on these little 6-9 point runs and you're just like, the hell, how are we supposed to keep up?
And it's the little things too.
Yeah.
They did not miss a free throw last game. None.
Wow.
0 free throws. Dude, it's the little things that they're doing and then the big things from the arc, dude. Alabama, we've been talking about them for a while. I think Alabama are them dudes out there. They're very fun to watch, very Golden State-ish.
Yeah, try to be like Florida from the mid-2000s, win a national championship in football, then go win a national championship in basketball. Actually won back-to-back national championships in basketball there in the late 2000s. We got more to come. We'll come back. Chuck Oliver, the king of college football, part of Chuck and Chernoff up on 680 The Fan. You can hear him on the Chuck Oliver Show nightly here all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network talking college football. We'll come back, catch up with Chuck Oliver, talk some college football around the SEC as we are in the middle of spring practice. Who's the favorite in the West? Is Georgia the predominant favorite in the SEC East? And who can make some noise in both of those divisions? We'll catch up with Chuck Oliver next right here on Second Down. Say to the Fan every afternoon, and right here across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network every night. Chuck Oliver joining us now. Chuck, thanks for taking the time, man.
Oh, anytime, Christian. I appreciate you having me on, brother.
Absolutely, and excited to talk some college football with you, specifically the SEC, as everybody now has kicked off spring practice, and a lot of turnover the last couple of years. We've seen a plethora of superstar quarterbacks, defenders come through, but really it seems like kind of a fresh start, but still obviously Alabama and Georgia, the favorites in the SEC. I want to start in the SEC West. When you look at second place right now in the SEC West, which team comes to mind for you first?
It would be Texas A&M, but with their 3.5-year starting quarterback coming back and their 4 departing offensive linemen, but, they're all gone. It would be LSU if you could promise me that the production will be on par with the talent on that roster. That's a great question. I mean, Lane Kiffin may be like standing in the corner going, "Hoo-hoo, nobody look at me. Maybe I can finish second." Every team past Bama, there is a reason to feel better than maybe you did at the end of last season. You know, LSU, they bounced back, beat Florida and Ole Miss. Now we're 5-5. But for every team also, you're looking and you go, all right, Ward. Ole Miss is going to be the most exciting, but Texas A&M, even with a new starter, I would probably say that they're best positioned. Maybe one of the best left tackles in the game, in the SEC, at least Kenyon Green, who kicks out from guard this year. And then Jamon Osman coming back, as well as, I think the number is like 7 of their top 8 pass catchers from last year, in addition to Jamon Osman. And there's a lot to like on defense with Elko. And so I would say at this point, Texas A&M, but of course, if the quarterback goes sideways, you got no chance to win.
Right, and you don't know right now who it's going to be, but I think arguably, and a lot of people will point at Georgia, but I think arguably when you go 1-2 punch, starting with Isaiah Spiller, I think Texas A&M might have the best 1-2 punch in the SEC right now.
Yeah, and Devin Achane decided that he would show everybody what he can do a little later in the year. But Anaya Smith, my gosh, he became one of my favorite players in the conference. He was a wide receiver, and if you think back to the end of the 19 season, I think they were playing Oklahoma State in the bowl game, and Jimbo looks around and he's like, yeah, I got one running back. I literally have one scholarship running back. So they moved Smith to running back and say, you're not really going to carry the ball, kind of a hybrid, whatever. He was as diverse and he was Kadarius Toney, except he had more carries. I absolutely love that kid. They have a deep, talented, diverse backfield.
And I just want to see if you follow my mindset here with Auburn. Usually when you think Auburn's going to be good, you put them in, you vote them second or first in your SEC West polls. They're terrible. They lose 6 games. They fire their coach 2 years after winning a national championship. But then when you think Auburn's going to be bad, they jump up and win 10 games, surprise you, win the SEC West. This year, I'm feeling like they might be that kind of team. I really like Brian Harsin. I really like the coordinator hires they made. And I think Bo Nix, when you get Mike Bobo and Brian Harsin, and he's a junior coming back, already has an Iron Bowl win under his belt, I think Auburn could surprise some folks this year.
You said, and when Bobo gets with him, and can Auburn fans, they want to know, can we skip to when that has already happened? Because I agree with you. I think the coordinator hires were amazing. And Brian Harsin, I mean, he played quarterback at Boise. He knows what it looks like. He's led a team to, bowls and, and New Year's Six and all that at Boise. The biggest challenge in my mind for Auburn this year is there are too many positions where it's not just a restocking, but it's a tear down and rebuild. Specifically, the offensive line, tear down and rebuild. They were starting all guards last year. They had 4 guards and a defensive tackle. That was their offensive line for about half the season. And so that's a total tear down and rebuild. Bo Nix, that's a tear down. Like technique, how he operates in the pocket. And Mike Bobo can do that, absolutely. But this is not a small task ahead. There's a lot of talent on that roster. And, he's also has he's about 50-50 split his, staff between guys who know the SEC and guys who, he knows personally. And so they're making the inroads and, developing those relationships. But there's still talent on that roster. But, I mean, with Bo and that offensive line, there's the story to the entire season. Derek Mason will get people to run around and hit you. They'll figure out some guys to catch the ball, I believe. But up front and then with Bo, that's 98% of your story this year.
And then with the Mississippi schools, I think a fascinating year. I think Ole Miss is going to have to score 50 points a game if they want to have the kind of season that Lane Kiffin, I know, wants to have. And then over second year with Mike Leach there at Mississippi State, Will Rogers probably going to take over at quarterback there. I think a really fun, interesting year, but also a year that could pretty much end up like every other year where both of those teams have 5-6 losses, or Ole Miss, Mississippi State maybe jumps up and surprises you.
Yeah, I was way impressed with Lane Kiffin last year because, I mean, he was given the same lot every coach had, but especially for a first-year coach and, system and spring practice and all that. And I've talked about this on my show. I give him so much credit. He was like, if there's no in-person recruiting, if the only recruiting is on our TV screen for 3 hours on Saturday, well, by God, we're going to have the best recruiting out there. And I'm watching a team. I know they're not good as an overall squad. I couldn't get enough. I'm like, when's Ole Miss on? And I don't even like to throw the ball. And I was like, give me the Rebels. Lane Kiffin was amazing last year, and that left state fans going, whoa, wait a minute. We hired the coach that's supposed to have the bombs away era. And I reminded some state fans that, Go look at when he was at Texas Tech. They didn't have that Graham Harrell, Michael Crabtree thing his first year. Go look at, Wazoo, that Gardner Minshew where he showed up, practiced like 4 times, and then led the nation in passing yards.
Oh, yeah, year 2 was much better than year 1.
That happened in 1 year. That was like year 7.
Yeah, year 2, much better than year 1 for Mike Leach at both of those stops.
Absolutely. And so that's what you've got ahead. But he thought he had the quarterback, and then we saw what happened there. I like the freshman coming back from last year, Will Rogers. I don't know what the backfield is going to look like beyond that. I don't know necessarily who's going to catch the ball because those receivers, Osiris Mitchell included, kind of been along for the ride for a few seasons. And he plays like 7 or 8 every Saturday. So they've got work to do, but that was also a reflection of a guy coming in and saying, everything you used to do, we're doing it 179 degrees different. And so Matt Corral was like, yeah, I stand in the pocket and I throw the ball around. That's kind of what I did last year. It was a bit more seamless for him. For everybody in Starkville, there wasn't anything seamless about Mike Leach's first year. It'll get better, but it's a complicated process.
And this feels silly to ask, and just going to the top of the SEC West here, it feels silly to ask, but are we putting too much trust in Alabama? I mean, you're replacing your starting quarterback who is a Heisman finalist. You're replacing a running back who was a Heisman finalist. You're replacing a wide receiver who won the Heisman, losing probably the best corner in the draft, a couple of great offensive linemen as well. You think about all of that turnover. Are we putting too much trust in Alabama, or do we just know what they have?
I think about 2000, maybe 15 or 16. I just looked at Tuscaloosa and I was like, get back to me when he ain't there anymore. What you're
That's
saying,
fair.
and I've asked the same questions about, well, they lose Mac Jones, he's a first rounder. They're going to lose Waddle and Devonta, they're first rounders. And I was like, yeah, they lost a first round quarterback and 2 first round receivers last year. It doesn't seem to matter. And Christian Barmore, neither of us mentioned him. I think he's a first rounder. It's just an amazing collection of talent. And when they have stacked class after class after class, it gets the ultimate benefit of the doubt. I was asking a question a couple of days ago on the show. I don't know if you heard, but I was saying this is the first spring where I don't know who the best offensive lineman in Tuscaloosa. I don't automatically go, oh, Jonah Williams, Cam Robinson,
right.
Cyrus. I don't automatically say that. But I said, look at this roster, write down all the names who are on scholarship right now. I don't know who the best guy is. I bet you 5 first-round picks are on this roster on the offensive line. We just don't know who they are yet. And so that's the benefit of the doubt I give them in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, and just the probably preseason number 1 team right now. Kicking over to the SEC East here. I know Cole Kubelik came out on the Feinbaum show a few days ago and said Georgia far and away the number 1 favorite in the East. As a Georgia fan growing up and as a station that carries Georgia football, that is just the most horrifying statement I can hear anyone say, Chuck. I get real worried that we're going to have a repeat of 2008 when I start hearing some of that get thrown around.
I would agree that if you look 1 through 85, or if you just want to break it down 1 through 22, or if you just want to pick a side of the ball and go 1 through 11, it's pretty tough to look around the SEC East and get much past Gainesville to find, something that holds up. It's the exact same thing I talked about over with Bama, stacking class after class after. I mean, they got 4 stars and 5 stars lined up, waiting on the sidelines for their chance to get in the game. I mean, did you see what they're doing with Adam Anderson this
Yeah,
spring?
they're playing him at dang Nickelback, Chuck. That scares me.
Well, he's a defensive end, and I'm like, that's what you can do. And the thing is, I met him his senior year of high school. He was like, very nice to meet you. I was like, you need to gain about 40 pounds. He flies around, and they're like, all right, well, he's not going to really ever get Hulkamaniac, so let's make the use. They're using Lavoisier Carroll, who I think was number 15 running back in the class, maybe 10th best running back in the class. They're flipping him over to corner, just experimenting in the spring, Kirby says. That's the level of talent they have, and that goes a long way towards winning ball games. I will say, I'm still waiting for that Georgia offensive line to just mash people. I mean, like 5 redwoods just grinding up folks in front of them. And we haven't seen that yet, and I don't know why. They've been good, and they're sending people to the league. But based on every recruit, 4-star, 5-star, 4-star, they're supposed to be way better than they are. And they've been good, but good ain't what their recruiting's been up front. That's the one mystery to me. But everything else, yeah, Kirby, it's far and away the best program in the East right now.
When you hear unlocking the offense, I know Buck Bellew on your station up there said it's time for Georgia to take the handcuffs off, throw the ball 40, 50 times a game. I think back 3 years ago, and it was a 30-70 split where Georgia was handing the football off, and they walked off the field with the lead in overtime. And then obviously we know what happened from there in the national championship game. I don't know that the success is going to come from throwing the ball 70% of the time at any level in football ever. Maybe that's just me, but I mean, even when LSU won the national championship, Clyde Edwards-Helaire led the league in rushing.
Isn't it interesting though that we were talking about how Lavassier Carroll, who I think was like a top 10 back in this class, that they're using him at corner, and Kirby says, "Well, we're just so deep at running back," and we're talking about using them less. We're talking about using the running backs. Like Kendall Milton, I think is the best running back on the roster. He was fourth team last year. Oh yeah, he's a true freshman. It's such a contradiction to what Kirby wants to do versus what I believe Kirby is going to do this year. And I believe it is kind of take the reins off and air it out a little bit. I think that he has finally paid attention to something that Nick Saban has just blatantly said. Now, this is a quote from during the season. He said, "Used to be run the ball, play defense, wins." That's not true anymore. You got to score a bunch. If Nick Saban says that, all right, I'm convinced. Talent's spilling over everywhere, and I really think that, like I said, the interesting part about that running back room is as deep as they are, so deep they're making position changes. They're not going to use them as much as they did last year.
Can Stoops at Kentucky compete for that second spot, or are we just fooling ourselves way early in the year that there's going to be a competition between Florida and Kentucky?
If the quarterback position can be a little more dynamic, and actually a lot more dynamic. I know Terry Wilson actually has a year left, and he's going on as a grad transfer. And so, I mean, I guess they're hoping it's Gatewood, right? And I know, like Eddie Gran, have you ever seen an OC firing more conciliatory and friendly than what Stoops and Eddie Gran pulled off?
Right,
like,
yeah, that was
I think I should go. And Mark Stoops is like, "Yeah, I didn't really want him to, but I guess." And so I'm looking forward to the UK offense, which honestly, when was the last time we said that? It was like when Joker was an assistant coach there, and it was, Stevie Johnson and Jacob Tamme and Woodson and all those.
Oh, yeah.
And you think, how can it be 15 years between good offenses in modern day football? But that's why I'm interested in Kentucky. They don't have the ponies. They don't have as good a roster as Florida. They probably don't have as good a roster, believe it or not. They don't have as good a roster as maybe, well, I'm going to take that. I was going to talk about Tennessee a little bit because there's still talent there, but that's not really how Kentucky makes their bones. Kentucky is a redshirt program, build it up every third or fourth year. We may be able to load up and stay in the race deeper into November like they did in 2018. But as far as challenging on a year in and year out basis, that's not really what the Kentucky program is going to be.
I was going to ask just kind of the folks trying to figure it out at the bottom of the SEC East right now. Vanderbilt, it's going to take a minute with Clark Lee, but I think that was a good hire. But you look at what Shane Beamer inherited there at South Carolina, Josh Heupel at Tennessee. It's not great right now. How do you see kind of the bottom of the SEC East shaking out? Because I think Missouri's got a good enough football team to where they can push for third, and if they can just get against Florida head-to-head, maybe compete for second.
Yeah, and Eli is tremendous, and I know that seems to be, that's what the choir is singing, and it should. But part of being a great coach and elevating a program, as great as the play sheet is and the play calls and the X's and O's and all that stuff, part of that is recruiting. I mean, so like I look over at Ed Orgeron and I'm like, sometimes I wonder, just stay out of the assistants meetings. Just let them call the plays. Let them be in charge. But when it comes to recruiting, you get involved, though. You got to give credit where it's due. And so Orgeron, there are parts of being a head coach where he's outstanding. I look at Eli Drinkwitz. I look at other, head coaches like Shane Beamer, and I'm saying, whether you like this or not, it's not just about the quality of the instruction. If you don't have horses, you ain't winning. And there ain't any players in Missouri, and there aren't any on a year-to-year basis. There aren't any players in South Carolina, so they have to up their recruiting. The X's plays work. I promise you, the plays work. But if you've got a 275-pound left tackle trying to block some fire breather, 280-pound DN or outside linebacker that runs a 4.6, it's a tough matchup week to week, and so they've got to stop being coaches who do more with less. Stop having less. That's the code that you got to crack if you're at Mizzou or South Carolina or Kentucky.
I'm sure
Not
that's what
having
they're
left.
saying in their recruiting meetings to their coaches as well when they're pointing out like which part of Georgia you have to go recruit. We need more than less than what we have right now. Chuck Oliver joining us here on Second Down. Chuck, before we let you go, man, we are in the middle of March Madness, obviously, but we had to do it a little bit different. We're doing right now our greatest college running backs ever, and we're getting close to the Final Four. Obviously, the matchups are nuts, and I'm gonna honorarily give you my vote on a couple of these. The first one I think might be the toughest one we have the whole time. Herschel Walker is going head to head with Georgia Southern's Adrian Peterson, college football's all-time leading rusher, 48 straight 100-yard games. I mean, I'm gonna give you the vote, man. Which one are you rocking with?
See, the tough part is you could say Herschel versus Billy Sims or Bo or George Rogers or whomever, and I'm lucky enough I got to see Herschel play. So I go with 34, man. I got no choice.
I'll let AP know. I was like, that wasn't my vote. That was Chuck Oliver. And the second one, I don't know if he has a chance. It's a tough draw, but Darren McFadden, one of my favorite running backs to watch, going up head to head with probably the best single season in college football history from Barry Sanders.
Oh, wow. Yeah, what was it, the 88 season? And then that Holiday Bowl against Wyoming. And by the way, look at Barry Sanders. You know what nobody does with their stud running backs today? You return kickoffs all season. I got to go with Barry Sanders. I mean, I'm turning them back on the Southern boys, aren't I?
Yeah, man, I'm going to let them know about it too. But Chuck Oliver, kind enough to hang out with us here on Second Down, talk some college football as we were right in the middle of spring practice. You can hear him nightly here on ESPN radio all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Chuck, man, we really appreciate the time. Always good talking ball, man.
No, you call anytime, man. Thank you.
And we got more to come here on Second Down. We'll be right back after this. Awesome catching up with Chuck Oliver there, and glad to have you guys alongside on this Tuesday afternoon. We, of course, presented to you by the Uniform Source. 2 different locations in Savannah take care of all of your uniform needs. Cody, I thought a lot of interesting quotes there from Chuck Oliver. Number one, he said he has given up on doubting Alabama. It doesn't matter what they lose. Here's a fact for you. If Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, and Mac Jones all go in the first round as they are projected to do, it'll be back-to-back years Alabama's had a quarterback and 2 wide receivers go in the first round. It's just absurdity. And so when you look
GOAT status.
I mean, it's absurd. And when you look and you think about the fact that you lose a Heisman finalist at quarterback, a Heisman finalist at running back, a Heisman winner at wide receiver, you lose your arguably, before you got hurt, maybe a better wide receiver than the Heisman winner. You lose 2 of your best offensive linemen. You lose the best cover corner in college football. Most teams are going to take a step back. I mean, that is LSU-esque level of loss in terms of players, and you saw what happened to LSU last year as a dumpster fire, right? Alabama is the predominant favorite to be the number 1 team in the country next year.
Oh, yeah.
And it's because of guys we haven't really seen, like Bryce Young.
He's going to be, I'll tell you right now, he's going to be a Heisman finalist.
But what have we seen out of Bryce Young? Hardly anything, right?
Yep.
And we don't necessarily know who's going to be the predominant ball carrier for Alabama next year. We think it might be Edwards, but they have a ton of guys that have been just high-level recruits. I think the defense is a big reason why a lot of people are comfortable picking Alabama as the number 1 team in the country next year. They have obviously lost Patrick Surtain, Christian Barmore, defensive line, but you have a majority of your linebackers coming back. You have some really phenomenal freshmen who played well last year coming back. That'll be sophomores and ready to step up into bigger roles on that defense. I mean, Alabama's a scary football team coming back next year. But the first question I started off with, Cody, is who's that number 2 team in the West? And I want it to be Auburn. Just out of my thought process with that is you have a junior quarterback coming back who started for 2 seasons, has an Iron Bowl win under his belt. You have one of my favorite players in the league, Tank Bigsby. I think he's going to be a great running back by the time it's all said and done. He had a phenomenal year last year as a freshman. It's like the 4th time I said phenomenal in this segment, but it's true.
You really believe it?
I really believe in him, but you also have some really solid guys on defense. You got some running backs that I like, some wide receivers that I like, but the lines of scrimmage are where everybody's hitting the pause button on Auburn. You don't know what that offensive line is going to look like. And sure, you bring Mike Bobo in to coach up the offense. Brian Harsin is an offensive guy himself, but it doesn't matter how many guys you have in there calling plays, drawing up schemes. I mean, you can bring in Kyle Shanahan if you wanted to draw up schemes. If you don't have the dudes to go out there and block it up, it doesn't matter what you're going to do. And so, you scratch off Auburn, go down to Texas A&M. I think the best 1-2 punch at running back in the SEC, and maybe you're saying, okay, one of those guys isn't necessarily a running back, he's more of a wide receiver hybrid. They're going to handle the ball. Think of them as like a Percy Harvin role inside of that, right? They have a great backfield. They have a really good defense, I think. You just don't know who the quarterback's going to be, and that's a horrifying thought to be going into a season not knowing who your quarterback's going to be when the threshold you have to get over is Alabama. I think Ole Miss, when it's all said and done,
you keep on saying
could be that number 2 team. Are they going to have a defense that gives up more than 30, 35 points a game? Probably. But you also have who I think is going to be the number 1 quarterback off the board next year in Matt Corral. I mean, I think this year you're going to have the preseason hype that's necessary to drive a Heisman campaign and get him up some draft boards early in the season, because Matt Corral is going to be the odds-on favorite, I think, to get the media vote in terms of first-team All-SEC quarterback when we do SEC Media Days in Birmingham again this year. He natural talent, Cody. We always do like the player comps to the NFL. He's a taller Zach Wilson with a bigger arm. And everybody's in love with Zach Wilson, right? I think Matt Corral is probably better just in terms of physical attributes. Is he going to turn the ball over a ton? Yeah. But if you, instead of having it as like an even split touchdowns to interceptions in a game, if you can just skew that to like a 3-to-1 ratio or like a 2 to 1.5 ratio, Ole Miss is going to be really good, because they don't care if you score on them, because they feel like they're going to go right down the field and score. Are you looking up his stats from last year?
Trying to.
You got your phone, a computer, another computer next to you, and you chose the phone. But I mean, I defense is where you're scared. with Ole Miss, but I think they're going to be good enough on offense to keep up in a lot of these games. It's just going to come down to the execution.
I mean, 70% completion percentage.
It's
boy.
nuts. It's literally the turnovers that get you with Matt Corral.
Yeah. If you had 14 interceptions, I could.
But how many touchdowns?
29. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's at that 2-to-1 mark, right? And so if you can keep it right there, you're feeling good. But also inside of that, there are a lot of fumbles. So just some bad decision making in some crucial situations. But when you're just completely putting it in his hands, like Lane Kiffin did, like Chuck Oliver said, Lane Kiffin thought, all right, we can't go to these kids and recruit. We can't bring them on campus. So Saturday night needs to be the most fun thing on television. And if you're a wide receiver and you're watching that, you're like, hell yeah, I want to go play for Ole Miss. You see them slinging the rock around and the quarterbacks that they have in the hopper ready to roll. I mean, Ole Miss is going to be fun to watch. I think Mississippi State is a team down the line, Cody, that showed that they had some grit. I think the quarterback position is going to be interesting to watch, but it's always that second year, Texas Tech, Washington State, where you see Mike Leach make that jump. And if you think about other coaches that have made that jump in the second year, Alabama's first year was bad. And I'm not comparing Mississippi State and Mike Leach to Nick Saban at Alabama, but I mean, he lost to, was it Monroe, Louisiana Monroe, his first year when he was at Alabama, right? And then you have Kirby Smart, his first year at Georgia, right? You lose a ton of games. You lose the last second throw, Josh Dobbs against Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You lose a ton of games that first season. Next season, you're a play away from winning the national championship. So it takes a minute, and especially in a COVID year, right? Something we had never seen before. You get there, you're trying to install your offense, you're trying to get your program up and going, and COVID-19 hits, you don't have a spring. I think Mississippi State could be a lot of fun to watch next year. SEC East is going to be fascinating, but I think it's a two-horse race. I think it's Georgia, Florida, like it always is. I think it's going to be decided in Jacksonville. Do I think Kentucky can make some noise? Absolutely. I think with the transfer quarterbacks they have coming in, whether it's Joey Gatewood from Auburn, who was there, he got to Kentucky last year, or the kid they got from Penn State, and then you get Cohen to come in as the OC, and they're going to be slinging the ball around like you've never seen Kentucky sling the ball around the last 10, 15 years. I mean, go back to the Tim Couch era with Kentucky, and they they throw the ball around the Jared Lorenzen era. I mean, Kentucky is not a school that is a traditional run-heavy football program. They used to sling the rock around. I mean, like I said, Lorenzen, Tim Couch, those dudes back then, getting back to that with a really good offensive line, some really good running backs, and a solid defense like you're always going to have under Stoops, they'll make some noise. They're not going to be a team you just go ahead and check off as a win, but the rest of the SEC is a dumpster fire.
I like Kentucky. I think they're going to have a few offensive linemen go in the draft definitely next year. You're just saying with Auburn's O-line, it can make a difference. And I feel like Florida might take a step back that Kentucky needs to take this year for advantage. Just like we're talking on the show a million times, the window's cracked right now for Kentucky, so they need to take advantage. And it sounds ridiculous for second place because you're not going to get first. I don't think Florida is either, so it's a battle for second place.
Pull up Kentucky's schedule for me, if you would, because I think that's the one thing that's going to get in their way. I'm pretty sure they have a murderer's row of a schedule coming up this season. I think that's going to be one thing that stands in the way. They're going to be one of those teams that's really good. Yeah, there it is. Let me see. You go at South Carolina, which but then you go Florida at home, LSU at home, at Georgia.
Oh my God. Whoa.
And LSU is going to be better next year, right? So you need to win 2 out of 3 of those games if you want to compete for a shot to have an SEC East title. And Kentucky could very easily go 0-3 in those games. And look at the season at the end. I mean, they're probably going to beat Monroe. Missouri's going to be a battle. That's going to probably be a must win for them. They'll beat Chattanooga and South Carolina. And then you should win probably the rest of your games, right? You have Mississippi State, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, New Mexico State, and the Louisville program that I don't really know where they're at right now, but I would have Kentucky favored in those games. But those middle 3, right? LSU, or Florida, LSU at Georgia. And think about that, Cody. Say somehow you upset Florida at home, which you beat Florida a couple years ago, right? Somehow you upset the Gators at home. Just theoretically, you beat LSU because LSU was an okay team last year. You're at home. It's probably going to be a night game. You're able to upset LSU. Okay, you're 2-0 coming off back-to-back battles. Oh, by the way, your reward for that, you have to go to Georgia. I mean, that's just a murderer's row right there in the middle of the schedule for Kentucky. But if you can come out of it and win 2 out of 3 of those, right, you're in a really good spot to be competing at the end of the season towards the top of those standings. So I think a fascinating year coming up in the SEC. Really appreciate Chuck Oliver hopping on with us to break it all down. If you missed any portion of that interview, you can catch it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, ESPNCoastal.com as well. We'll be right back. Final segment of Second Down coming up next. I would like to apologize, or maybe not apologize, to the people listening on Brunswick Waycross there, because you did get just a nice minute of some Mariah Carey action, but Brunswick decided it wanted to come back from commercial a little bit quicker than Savannah and Hilton Head there. But glad to have you alongside here on Second Down. Big show coming up today on 3 and Out. Going to catch up with Chad Lunsford, head football coach at Georgia Southern, here at 3:15. He's going to break down spring practice, which kicks off tomorrow. Also, Georgia Southern with their pro day coming up on the 25th. So a lot of stuff happening in Statesboro. Going to catch up with Chad Lunsford and break all that down. Also going to catch up with Buck Bellew, 680 The Fan, member of their Braves pregame, and also, obviously, Cody, big part of the Bulldogs roundtable up there. I mean, think about the show they got up on 680 The Fan. Buck and Hutt, just two former Georgia quarterbacks talking college ball. So we'll catch up with Buck Bellew, talk some Georgia spring practice and some Braves baseball coming up around 3:30. But Cody, we are just 3 days past a very important anniversary. I'm upset because you didn't get me anything for this anniversary. It's been a year, Cody, since Joe Exotic came into our life.
Yeah, I did see that, and the first thing I thought about is you guys, once everything like went downhill and you guys had to do the shows by yourself, and you guys nonstop were talking about Tiger. Did you guys watch?
Say nonstop.
Did you guys watch one episode a week, or did
one
you guys
episode a night?
A night,
like a week and a half.
And it was very entertaining. But you are a Joe Exotic fiend.
Am I?
Yeah, dude. You guys talked. You guys made a whole week and a half out of it.
I hated every second of watching that show.
No, I don't feel like you did.
Every single second. It made me feel dirty inside.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had murders going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the conditions the animals were living in.
Good old American TV, man.
That was just no. I'd rather have a root canal than have to sit through and watch that show again.
Really?
Yes.
I don't know about all that.
Like that was not a big fan. I
never rewatched it.
I know the memes, and I know everybody dressed up like Joe Exotic for Halloween and all the stuff like that. But I mean, I could have just dealt with the memes itself. Like I've never sat through and watched The Office, and half the reason for that is because I feel like I've seen the entire damn show in memes.
Yep.
And so yeah, Tiger King was good for some memes. Like I will never financially recover from this. It's funny as hell. Right. And there's some other stuff. I mean, the music inside of that show where he like paid somebody to sing and then he would make music videos and dub the singing over it. It was crazy. Right. It's just absolutely insanity of a show, but it did give us content for Kevin and I to discuss. So
Europeans just looking at us like, yep, this is what America is.
We will forever be thankful for Tiger King, I guess. But I mean, just talk about a train wreck of a show. That was tough.
Sounds like my divorce. I'm just fine.
I mean, just tough. And a lot of Florida involved in it. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of Florida involved in it. Yep. You're right.
Again, big show coming up. We'll catch up with Chad Lunsford coming up at 3:15. They're about to kick off spring practice. Also catch up with Buck Bellew as well in that 3:00 hour. If you or someone you know owns a small business, today is still the last day to sign up for our free Braves sponsorship giveaway. Just head to espncoastal.com, slide over a couple slides on the top box up there, and you'll see where to register. Enter. If you win, you will have a free Brave sponsorship coming up for the year. We will talk to you guys tomorrow.